title topic is aligning customer success and sales. And I would imagine you kind of have a framework or kind of structure to how you think about that.
Yeah, it's super hot right now. I think, one of the things that's been really, at the forefront, especially over the last couple of quarters here, is this concept of what we call durable growth. Because when you think about it, a couple of years ago, growth at all costs, right? We can go capture and pull in any revenue that we want, but durable growth is really about how do I grow? How do we grow consistently? And how do I do it profitably? And do that the right way. And it really requires great orchestration across your entire customer lifecycle. And, I would say, the most fundamental aspect that when you think about kind of the intersection of customer success and sales, it just orientates itself on the concept of delivering value and outcomes. So for us at Gainsight, we've created, we have both a kind of a post-sales and a pre-sales process. And we've got a very focused, what we call kind of the Gainsight human first value selling methodology. We've leveraged force management. We've leveraged a couple other, tools and techniques and tools out there to go build that. But we've aligned this end-to-end process with what we call O2. You have to have a fancy acronym, and O2 short for operationalizing outcomes. And what this really means is every one of our sales processes starts with a value hypothesis. And so based on what we know, based on the other evidence we have in existing customers of value, every one of the reps has to determine, look, here's the outcome that I expect to drive. Value is really built on a number of different things. It's what do I think that outcome is? How do I measure it? What's a rational metric for that? What's an appropriate timeline? Putting all that stuff together, reps build that value hypothesis. That value hypothesis turns into a success plan, actually automatically in Gainsight. So for us, we use Salesforce. That moves from Salesforce into a success plan. And that goes into our adoption team, who's focused on, all right, here's the outcome that we sold. Here's what we're trying to go deliver. We're going to put the right workflows and processes in place to go enable that outcome. And then our customer success team is accountable for driving that outcome. And when they achieve that, we call it a VO, a verified outcome. And this turns into a great flywheel because every one of those VOs then can feed back into the sales team, either as something we can use in another similar customer, or, when you think about it, once I've driven that level of adoption, customers on board, they've seen that first value moment. There's a great thing we call customer success SQLs, where we find opportunities for cross-sell, for expansion within the account, just based on driving that verified outcome. But having that framework, that O2 framework, it's critical because you need that common language, because you've got a broad set of customer needs. You've got all these different and extensive product capabilities. How do you actually attribute success to Gainsight and to the solution that you're bringing to market? And how do you prevent a lot of our, general speak in the market, I've seen it a number of different times. Customers go in, they buy something. Then the post-sales team comes in and says, okay, what do you want to do? And they're like, well, wait, we just spent the last 6 to 9 months with your sales team or the SC team or this or that. And then the post-sales comes in and they've got a different set of templates and a different set of onboarding tools. And it's like, wait a second, I just lost all that time. So having that framework is absolutely critical for us.
Awesome. And then how do you incent around that?
Yeah, so it's a great call. One, for our CS team, they actually have a compensation component that's tied to number of verified outcomes. So they are heavily driven towards ensuring that whatever that outcome is, we actually go achieve it, and it goes back into our verified outcome database to ensure that customer is getting value, because ultimately, again, it's about value. Sales organization for us, fairly standard kind of compensation plan for the reps in terms of overall bookings, but there's a number of different things that we've put in there in terms of driving both longer term deals and deals that demonstrate that they're using more of the platform, so that we can bring as much value to the customer as possible.
Awesome. Very cool. So moving on, what about advice for people breaking into tech sales? Maybe name one thing.
Advice for people breaking into tech sales. I'd say just what I talked about there for a moment is you got to bring value and passion. And, what's awesome about Gainsight is it's around driving outcomes. So it's a product that I can be passionate about because it's something that from my early professional services days back at Sun, it was really, really important to me. So whatever you do, be that expert. And this is an old line. I forget where it came from. I think it was maybe one of the Challenger things. be the doctor, not the drugstore, right? Your customer goes to a drugstore when they've got a headache, they know they need a Tylenol. But when they don't know how to go solve that problem, they go to the doctor. And your ability to go do that and really be an expert within your domain and within your space, absolutely key.
And then next, what about advice for those in recent sales?
Learn how to use ChatGPT. I don't mean flippant about that, but I do think if you look at where the industry is going, just understanding the impact of these new technologies on these roles, absolutely critical. Like you gotta understand how to use it because you are going to be impacted in some form or fashion. And then, the other thing I'd say, like again, it's to be a common theme. Go back on where you can go drive value for customers, and if you can focus on that, you're going to prove your weight in gold.
Awesome, really, really cool. And then we've certainly, back in the day when I'd operating jobs, it was sales ops. Now it's really rev ops. It really does so much more. What are any of your kind of, I don't know if I'm allowed to say favorites or kind of tools, obviously Gainsight, but any others that you're passionate about?
Yeah. So for us, Gainsight, our Gainsight and Gainsight instance is absolutely critical for a number of different factors for the team. The other one that I'll talk about for a moment is we've launched what I affectionately call Air Dashboard. So activities, indicators, and results. And that's really understanding how you can go drive a run of the business and map those ultimate bookings all the way down to what are the day-to-day activities that, whether it be an SDR, a rep, or some person in the organization need to go execute. One of the things that we use to help go drive that is Atrium. So Atrium is a great tool. So Pete, who's the CEO over there, and also runs Modern Sales Pros, great guy, great tool, gives me really interesting visibility into everything from activities. And so you look at what happened over the last couple of quarters with a massive shift in the tech market space. Atrium can pick it up in terms of rep activities. You can kind of see what segments are being impacted, how and when they're being impacted. So it's really, really key to get those analytics and drive it into action.
Awesome. Cool. And then I think your tech stack is also kind of Gong, Clary, 6sense.
Yep. Got all of those. Salesforce, fairly probably standard, but very varied tech stack like most CROs out there.
Cool. All right. Well, Gong's a sponsor, sales community. So I'll let you give them a shout out, kind of what you think, how they're helping you.
Yeah, we leverage them. And another great example for Gong, especially in light of what's happened in the market recently, is sentiment analysis. So we started looking at, keywording certain things that came up in our sales calls, like recession, economic uncertainty, things like that. You can start keying off of that and see when what we're seeing now, impact certain segments and then how to respond to that. The other awesome thing about Gong that I would call out, one of the sales tools that we've put in place along the lines of, in our value selling processes around trap setting questions. And when you think about getting your sales team on board with exhibiting a new behavior, you've got to, show that behavior working. We've been able to go back and look at calls where our reps are leveraging some of these new techniques and then show that they have a higher close rate. A very marked different in close rate when you're using the tactics and the tools that we put into place. So another great pitch for a tool like Gong there.
Awesome. You said there was trap selling questions, or what was it?
Trap setting questions. So it's a force management concept.
Okay.
And really what it's about is like when you're out there engaged with prospect and you are trying to differentiate, how do we do something better? Well, you need to differentiate against someone else. And so it's not necessarily about, let me call it the competition and say that they're poor at this, but it's asking a question where it's like, do you need a complex, multi-product model to support your business? Something like that. And the reality is certain competitors can't go do that. So you're asking a question where they're digging into their requirements and surfacing a requirement that is going to disqualify your competition. So they're trap setting questions.
Wow. Very cool. And amazing. You think back, 10 years ago, I say you had the, LinkedIn and Salesforce was a big deal. Now, all this stuff that's available, it's, almost like cheating.
Yeah.
So now you're in the catbird seat of the sales tech stack space. So, look down the road, kind of, 5-10 years, any bold predictions?
There's definitely going to be some consolidation, and definitely consolidation driven on what's going on in the economy right now. But I think, you have these buckets that have been historically separate and are starting to come together. Great example. And not that I'm predicting anything here, so don't read in, but think about customer marketing and what your marketing team does with Marketo. And I talked early on based on, I think, Tim's question around understanding your core ICP. Well, who knows better about what's happening in your customer base than Gainsight? Right. So how do you align the data between marketing and customer success to ensure that you're doing the appropriate account-based marketing, the appropriate targeting, hitting people at the right moment with the right call to action? So, I definitely see all these spheres coming together, and I've seen it more now, even with, CS and sales, because, 8 years ago, it was, customer success was something you needed when, okay, I'm starting to lose some customers. I've got a leaky bucket, so I just got to work on shoring that up. But in very short order, you recognize you have to get proactive. You have to go out there aggressively, and CS is a great enabler to do that. So I just think the merging of the entire customer lifecycle and the data analytics around it, it's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, be interesting. You think about kind of how the ERP vendors, we had Informix, Sybase, PeopleSoft, and it kind of basically blended into an Oracle and an SAP. But you can kind of almost see the same thing where they're kind of, maybe there's a Gainsight and a Gong, and everybody else basically gets gobbled up or goes away. But who knows? I won't ask you to comment. But obviously, Gainsight, yes, would be a monster.
Yes,
in that space, you can agree with that.
100%.
And then what on the training side? Because that's certainly, you've got kind of early in career sellers, you got later in career sellers. So, are there anything special that you do there? Leveraging internal resources or external? I think you mentioned Force before.
Yeah, so I'll give a shout out to Kelly Jarrett, who runs our enablement and ops team now. So she so she's built out just an amazing foundational enablement program, and it's a number of different factors. From we do weekly sales scoop calls, we've got sales academy sessions on a monthly basis, and just having a consistent muscle for the appropriate content, getting into a centralized spot. Getting it engaged throughout the organization. It's just been a great process that she's built into play to ensure that we not only have an onboarding routine, because look, the first thing you do when you set up enablement is like, how do I get reps onboarded and ramped? But then you realize it's a continual ramp, because I'm asking them to do very different stuff this year than I was last year, than I was the year before. As we shift more product, the market changes. So using that foundation to now just being an ongoing mechanism to give people, the latest and greatest in terms of tools, strategies, and tips to go out there and crush it.
Awesome. Very, very cool. And what about any one or two examples of sales leaders that you respect?
When you go across, I call out some on my own team. Jim, Murph, who's our head of North America. Great guy who's worked his way up from rep and one of our strategic reps all the way to running the Americas for me. Kev, who runs my European business, great example of somebody that's come on board, built something from the ground up. And it's really important, like we talk about culture already, but just the culture he's built around the Gainsight team and the esprit de corps for the European team has been key. So I'll call my own leaders. Like if I look historically, you've got John McMahon from PTC and some kind of the early sales leaders and all those different methodologies and kind of values that they've espoused. That's definitely an area that I look to. The other, and this probably goes back to the first value selling methodology that I actually really subscribed to was Challenger sale, Challenger customer. And then more recently, so Matt Dixon wrote The Jolt Effect. We had him at our kickoff. I'm sure you've probably read The Jolt Effect, just great book and, great focus on, how do you, there you go. I love it. But things evolve and adapt, and you have to evolve and adapt, and thinking about how do I de-risk this buying process instead of doing the same thing that I'm always doing, which is we've got a really good ROI. I'll go back and look at ROI. I'll throw you more data around that ROI as opposed to how do I reduce that risk? Because let's face it, customers buy when they have confidence in themselves, not necessarily just you.
Totally. Awesome. Last question. Any advice you would give your younger self? Looks like you've mastered everything, family, work, your interests, everything else. So That might be
No, I mean, look, there's probably a lot that I would give myself. I mean, not taking yourself too seriously. Balance is really key. Don't put off to tomorrow what you can do today, and you can think about that in terms of your career, but you can also think about it in terms of your family and your life, and this is where human first becomes incredibly important. I had a very dear friend, fellow CRO, passed away unexpectedly about 8 weeks ago. And you look at the stress that all of us are under in tech in this industry, and it really it hits home, and it makes you kind of think like, why are we doing this, and ensuring that everything you do has some sense of purpose to what your greater good is. Really, really key to keep a focus on that, because I have my moments, and I think we all do, where you get so heads down and you kind of forget about that. And then you realize, man, that is super important.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, you've been an amazing guest, super impressive. And it's great to say I knew you way back when, but you're on an amazing track, and the future somehow can only get brighter. So it's very, very cool. So thanks for that. So coming up next week, episode 126, we have Mark Stevenson. His topic is going to be go-to-market alignment, one team, one go-to-market for efficiency and leverage. And then Monday, May 22nd, we got the legendary Tom Mendoza, who was early on at leader at NetApp, eventually vice chairman, and a whole bunch of great boards. West Point and others have him come talk on leadership and culture. So I know he'll be great. And then that college in South Bend has his name on their business school as well. So thanks to Convertive for sponsoring. For those that are not members of Sales Community, feel free to join. And those that are, thanks. And most importantly, Jeff, wish you best continued success at Gainsight.
Awesome, Randy. Great chatting with you.